So thank you everybody for coming. Really excited to have you here today. I'm curious, does anybody know of a man by the name of James Palmer? Anybody ever hear that name, James Palmer, before? I wouldn't be surprised if I see a bunch of blank stares and that giant no to that one. So James happened to be the Exchequer of London. You might even, and he was that from 2004 to 2012. And you might even be asking yourself, what's the Exchequer of London? Well, that's essentially the treasurer. And what they do is they collect taxes, they process all the invoices, they pay all the bills, and they do all that kind of fun stuff. And about 2010, an invoice came across James's desk, and it was for $213,000. And it was to clean all the screens, all the grates that were at the top of the smokestacks that were in their refineries and their milleries and things like that around the town. And he started to, got really curious about this invoice. So he started to do some investigation. And upon investigation, he started to realize, he's like, heck, we've got an invoice for the same thing from 1990, 1980, 1970, 1960. Heck, he found invoices dating all the way back to 1942. Anybody, quick history lesson here. Anybody remember what was going on in London in about the 1940s? Anybody remember what was going on? Exactly. I see John Moffat over there. World War II, right? That was what was going on at the time. And so at that time when they were doing that, whenever the enemy fighter bombers would come over the city, what they did as a strategy was they would black out the entire city. And this was their way to, minimize any of the destruction, take away any of their targets, and do all that kind of stuff. The challenge is that they had all their milleries and their refineries and their manufacturing plants still going. And so that at the top, at the smokestacks that were coming out, you could see from the sky, you could see the fire at the bottom of them, because they were, of course, being used to, make ammunition, build all their artillery, their machinery, the weapons and things like that. And so it was a really easy target for the planes and the enemy planes flying over. So what they did is they went through and they put screens over the top of all the smokestacks around town, so that when they blacked out the city, you also couldn't see the smokestacks. And so James was going around and he was, asking people in the department about this, like, hey, why are we still doing this? Why are we still cleaning these things? And the answer that he always got, what do you think was the answer that he always got to that question? Why are we still doing this invoice? Why are we still paying for this? Because it's what we've always done, right? It's just the way it's always done. It's the way it's always been. And so, as we think about that, that's one of the things we wanted to talk to you about today, was how the status quo is costing you big time. And how many people in your organization right now are doing things because that's just the way they were taught in the beginning, and it's just what they were told to do. And so they just continue to do it. And so that's what we want to talk about today, really. And what our goal is for this presentation is to help us understand and to think through how customer profitability is being hurt by some of your clients. Like, some of them take way more time, energy, and effort in order to fulfill and to serve than other clients do. And it's that profitability drain that's actually hurting your ability to grow. And we all know that profit, it fuels the cash in the business. That's where your cash comes from. Heck, that's what fuels your retirement, is the profitability in your business. When I was running Sage Executive Group, if you guys are familiar with Sage Executive Group, that's very similar to Vistage. So it's a CEO peer group. In one of my peer groups, I actually had two businesses. One was a $5 million business who struggled every single month to make payroll. And another was an $800,000 business who netted $400,000 every single year. I'm curious, which business would you like to run? Do you want the top line revenue one, or do you want that one that's pocketing nearly $500,000 every year? My guess is you want the profitability one. Yep, exactly. Number two. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is really taking a look at how businesses run in that particular fashion, and what are some of the things that we can do specifically to help our sales team to get back into alignment with where our profitable customers are and how we can actually hunt and find them more effectively. Mike, what are our goals for today?
Yeah, so, really the goal here is to improve overall customer profitability, get bad customers out of an organization, and really focus the organization's efforts on their best customers. So you're identifying and weeding out the unprofitable customers, and you're really starting a permanent cultural shift to start the whole team thinking about this, both accounting and sales. So,
Absolutely.
I've been doing this, gosh, so when I started doing turnaround work 300 years ago, and was using an abacus to do the financial analysis, I worked with a guy that was probably the brightest financial mind I've ever worked with, Harvard MBA, Lehman Brothers corporate finance, blah, blah, blah. And so when we started working together, I was very junior, but he would dive in and I would dive into typical financial analysis. We go to 5 years of historicals and do this, that, and the other thing and analyze the numbers every way till Sunday. We did that for maybe 6 months or a year. And then we started realizing after we had done that analysis and went out and talked to the customers were telling us everything that we learned through the financial analysis, plus a whole bunch of information that was much more critical. And so we actually started shortcutting the financial analysis. We do a little bit of financial analysis, talk to the team members, both on the accounting and on the sales side, understand what they thought was going on with the customers, then go talk to the customers with the preliminary financial analysis. And it turned out that sped our process up so dramatically that became the way that we did things ever since. And now, 25 plus years, any number of businesses, industries, situations, we use this across the board as a way of really quickly getting our head around what's a company all about. Because once you understand the customers, you understand the business. So they
Absolutely. And for just a quick introduction of myself. So I'm the CEO of Consilio, which actually stands for On Purpose in Latin. So we're all about creating success on purpose, one conversation at a time. We specifically focus in on helping to improve the results of sales teams as well as leadership teams. So we work with in kind of those two areas. And specifically think about your team right now. Are there middle managers that you have that are, helping to run your front lines that could use this education to understand where does the profitability come from and how they can replicate that over and over again so that your front lines can create that intentionality around how they're prospecting for new business, as well as how you're serving your existing customer base and making sure that they're the right ones to take care of. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is kind of looking at those things. And one of the reasons why Mike and I are doing this together is because we want to demonstrate how it's really important to start to bring your accounting and sales teams together. And even though there's a bit of a rub between the two often, look, see, the two of us can play nice in the sandbox. So we're here to show you that it's really effective to bring them together. And it's a really powerhouse tool when you have them collaborating with one another to help conspire to help build your profitability. And we got a great mix on the call today. A lot of different people signed up for the presentation. And so we've got advertising, professional services, insurance, law, tax, restaurants, solar, waste management, a bunch of different industries. So the thing that I want you guys to take away is that this applies to every single business, B2B, B2C, retail, professional service, all different kinds. And so I want you to be thinking about that. And if you're challenged with asking yourself, I'm not sure how this applies, Mike and I are going to be meeting with everybody after the fact as well. So if you want to spend some time with us, we offer up our time to be able to do that, to really make sure you're applying this to your business. And that's actually a really good segue to make sure that you pull out your worksheets if you have it. It's in the chat there if you wanted to download it and make sure that you use that. It's a fillable PDF, so you could type directly in it. And this will be one of the tools that you'll definitely want to leverage. And also, please, guys, since we are an intimate group, you don't have to stay, if you want to put something in chat or a question, or you want to take yourself off mute and ask a question, please do so. We'll be putting you in breakout rooms as well to do some exercises on your own. So give me just a second here and I'll share my screen. Everybody can see us okay? See that okay? Perfect.
Can we do a quick intro so that we know what everybody else's business is in?
That would be great, Eddie. I appreciate that. Yeah. Why don't you kick us off?
Sure. So my name's Eddie McLaughlin. I have a solar installation business. So we install solar on residential and commercial buildings here in California.
Excellent. Repower Orange. John, how about you? You're muted. We need the mug. You're on mute.
So I'm John Mayers. I am a lawyer. This is my 32nd year doing this, and commercial law, commercial litigation. I've only sued Mike 4 or 5 times, and I'm looking forward to the next time I get to sue Mike. So.
We met John on the other side of the table with a customer, with a client that had not done a good job on their profitability analysis. And once we got a chance to work with John, even on the other side of the table, we've never let him go. And Eddie, how many clients do you have roughly at any given time, I should say?
Probably about, it ranges from 1 to 8 per month right now.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. I imagine that number keeps growing. There's been a lot of benefits coming out for solar.
Well, ideally that number shrinks and we're doing more commercial installations. I'd rather have 1 commercial client. I'd rather have 2 commercial jobs a month than 15 residential jobs per month, but
I can appreciate that.
I'll figure that out by the end of today.
Exactly. Tim, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Tim Morton, and I'm president of a company called Prompted, Latin and Readiness, and we're a change management company. We're certified diverse, and we do a lot of AI to drive change. So professional services.
They have a really cool survey system that they can put out and really, mine data from your team and, really get you good feedback on what they're really thinking, an actual pulse on your company. Karen.
I'm
Looks
Karen
like
House,
you're
and
representing Carrasco today.
yes, we are a tax credit firm. So we do all kinds of different tax credits for businesses.
Fantastic. And same question to you, how many clients do you guys typically have on like whatever basis?
I don't know the full number. We have some more active than others, but quite a few.
Yeah. Miss Mary, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I have a company called Proactive Marketing. It's a strategic branding and marketing company where my clients are professional services firms, so B2B professional services. I have 4 to 6 clients at any given time. Most of my clients are retainer clients that are my longest standing client I think I've had for 19 years now. And then I do some project-based work as well. So it's interesting because I work on monthly retainers, so this concept of profitability and tracking, and when for a lot of professional service advisors are on this call, our time is our money, and so how do you value that? And so value pricing is how I price my engagements, but I do track, kind of trying to get an RO, return on time invested, or return on investment. Obviously, when you go to renew your clients, how do you price it? Raising the prices, keeping on scope is the biggest challenge for what we do. And I did actually just recently kind of fire a client, so I feel a lot better after that happened. It was a very unprofitable client.
Good.
It's funny,
Good
the
for you.
relief, huh?
Oh, such a relief. Yeah, unprofitable and not a good communicator. So, yeah.
The emotional drain it takes, and then the joy you see on your team's face when you actually make the choice to make that call to get rid of them. It's like they ask, why, what took you so long, sort of idea.
Exactly.
Same thing, by the way, with an underperforming employee.
Mhm.
The rest of the team's waiting for you to just make that decision. Mr. Bartik.
So I am the president of Consilio. Stacy's my business partner. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. Also, I'm a best-selling author, wrote the book on sales called Silver Bullet Selling. And right now, I think we invoiced, 18 clients this month. And again, we're a professional services organization working on a retainer basis with just about most of our clients. So we oftentimes are looking at, hey, how much time are we spending with this client? And are we being profitable with them or not?
And is the things that we're doing for them things that they even value, right? Sometimes we're serving, we think we're delivering exceptional service, and they're not even valuing those additional things that we're doing. So, we're not even getting the win out of it, which is important to consider. And then Adrian, I don't know if you can, if you want to share, I know with Carrasco as well, with Karen's group. I see them active in chat. There we go. Okay, perfect. We'll look for you there. Thank you. Thanks, Eddie. I appreciate that. That was good for everybody to have a chance to meet each other. So pop back over here. All right. So again, this is just an example of your worksheet. Go ahead and pull that out if you have it, because I think, again, your thought process would be good to share it along with what we're doing here. So one of the things that I wanted to kick off with was really around this whole idea of, why are your sales folks always be closing, right? Why are they always be closing with that mindset and that attitude? And I use the image here of Glenn Ross to, kind of get a laugh. But the reality is that most salespeople, and if you've hired the good ones, they want to close. They're out there to generate new business. That's what they do really well. And that's what they're about. I almost liken them to a hammer, and everything's a nail. So whenever they're out there, they're just, pounding away, making sure that they're bringing in that new business. That's what they've been bred to do. And that's also what they love to do. And so, as you think about your sales team, I want you to start to ask that question of, who are they closing and how are they going about that? Because sometimes, again, we can grow ourselves right out of business by actually selling to the wrong people. And again, they don't really care as long as they're signing. And why is that? Why oftentimes do they struggle with bringing in the right people? Typically, it's because we don't really have an ideal client crystal clear. And sometimes we've got some elements of it, but we still don't have all the attributes clearly laid out. And so what happens is when we don't have the clarity around that, salespeople are already notoriously not great at asking questions or doing great discovery. They've heard the same things over and over again. So they tend to just go right to the solutions because they know this already. They've been there and had this conversation a few thousand times. But it gets even worse in the absence, again, of this ideal client profile, because the questions that they might ask in discovery could really uncover whether or not this prospect matches or meets some of these criteria, and would allow them to be able to do a selection process in terms of self-selecting in and out. Again, as you think about this, sometimes it's really important to have the list of people that you want to say no to just as much as the people you want to say yes to. And we even encourage people to do this on your strategic planning process. You think about goals and targets and things like that. But there also needs to be a list in your strategic plan of the things that you're saying no or not now to. And I think the same thing should be applied in your sales process. And as you're thinking about the ideal client, you might also have another list of people like, we definitely want to stay away from these types. And it's not just industries or types of businesses. It's really about the client behaviors that you want to drill in on. Those are the things that you really want to pay attention to. And that'll help your salespeople to ask better questions.
From an accounting and finance perspective, we often view salespeople as the ones that invite the energy vampires into our company. They bring in these bad customers and then they just drain all of our resources. So it's really great to put a structure around it so accounting can say, it doesn't fit in the box. And helps sales with that decision.
And the reality is take a look at your compensation structure. Does your compensation structure incentivize them to sell to your ideal customer, or does it incentivize them to just sell top line revenue? Because if it really focuses in on their commission structure coming from that top line, then you're going to find there's a good percentage of that business that's just not the right fit for you. So one of the things that we often work on in Consilio when we come in and help an organization with their sales team is really taking a look at that sales compensation structure and making sure that it aligns to the behaviors and really incentivizes the behaviors and activities that drive to the outcomes that we're desiring. So those are some of the elements that I want you to pay attention to as you're thinking about just how your sales team performs and what they're targeting. And especially, communicating this with your sales leaders and making sure that they know what's the most important thing for the sales team to be focused on, so that as they're working on cultivating that pipeline, it can really help people to self-select which ones are appropriate and not. Because the reality is what you're going to see, and we're going to go into deeper detail on this, is that the 80-20 rule is alive and well, and it's working very beautifully in this scenario. People don't understand which 20% actually brings them the 80% of the result. And so this is really the exercise designed to help us to get focused in on that. And just as well, and just as important is to know the other side of it, which 80% is only bringing 20% of the result. Think about that. You get rid of close to 80% and still have the same amount that you're doing. And we're even going to show you how sometimes selling to unprofitable clients actually diminishes and takes away from the good profits that you have. And so it's kind of crazy to see that you could actually grow your business simply by selling unprofitable clients, by firing unprofitable clients.
So jumping into a relatively simple income statement here, we've got an engineering company example here because engineering is one that has changed so dramatically over the past 40 or 50 years. And it's also very similar to professional services overall. But what we're looking at is a typical, income statement with a small mid-sized business doing $100,000 a month. They're bringing 5% to the bottom line. Product cost isn't very significant because it's an engineering firm. They don't bring in much there, and they're really heavily weighted to compensation, not just the engineering payroll, but sales and G&A. And this example is actually a little bit low on the compensation side. Most of the companies we're seeing today that are not pure manufacturing companies are actually 70-75% and above employee-related costs. So understanding how those costs are driven is critical. The goal of this slide is just to show, look, we've got 5% coming to the bottom line. Where is it coming from? So let's take a deeper dive. Let's start looking at what happens if you start segmenting customers. And for argument's sake, we're going to say that we've got either two segments or two customers, one good, one bad. And really, because product cost is not as dramatic as it used to be, there's really not very much change here in the analysis. But this is where a lot of companies stop. They see that both these companies have good gross profit. They compensate their salespeople on the gross profit, and therefore, there's no action item here, right? But if we start looking down into the costs that can be analyzed in a little bit less traditional format, what we're doing is restructuring the income statement to start with things that we know at the top and things we know less at the bottom. And so if you switch to the next page, Stacy, what we're really looking at here is starting to take a good look at what's actually going on with the more material costs in the organization. And just starting with overruns. So typically what we see is that the overruns, which can be the equivalent in a professional services firm, is time not billable, right? People have to eat time, or you have to write things off of invoices. But in engineering, there's overruns because these bad customers typically are driving a lot more re-engineering and don't often want to pay for it. So you may be getting bad instructions from clients. There's scrap related to these problems. And then as you start working through executive time, which is usually a big chunk at medium-sized companies, and start thinking about, okay, what's happening to those people's time, which is all they have to sell and what drives the expense in the organization. What is happening with the customers as it relates? Are they spending a disproportionate amount of time coaching salespeople off the ledge because they've got such an irritating customer? Are they having to go out and smooth ruffled feathers because of an irritated client? And you start talking about, okay, and obviously that's typically not something that's measured on a time report. Most of the time the C-suite's not filling out a time report. So how do you get this information? You really, through interviews and through their own observation. And it's okay to be anecdotal as you're starting to move through this process, because oddly enough, almost everybody in an organization knows which customers are wasting their time and where they're not spending their time. So this is, we talked early on in the outline about interviewing your people to find out who the good customers and who the bad customers are. They know. And this is analysis that really shows where the bigger dollars in the organization are starting to be skewed. And so you start to see the skewing here pretty dramatically, and not making any dramatically crazy assumptions about what's going on. These numbers don't appear to be wildly different. Maybe the engineering payroll is double, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward. C-level time is pretty dramatic as well. But look at the difference at the operating income by customer. I mean, we are starting to see a dramatic swing already. And if to emphasize the fact that this can be anecdotal, if these numbers are 20 or 25% off, it's still dramatic. And that's really where you start putting together a hypothesis of what's going on in the organization and taking a deeper dive. So we're talking about high dollars. We're talking about how your people are spending their time, where they're spending their time, and what is happening when they're not doing, when they're spending time with those bad customers, when they're getting their time sucked into this, the right side column here, what's not happening? Well, they're not out talking to the good customers. Your salespeople are not freed to go out and identify better customers or sell more for more services or goods to the customers they have.
Yeah, and one of the things that you can do pretty easily with your team is you can do the ABCD list. So A are those clients that are awesome. They always pay on time or early. They rave about you to other people. They give you referrals and testimonials, and they don't nickel and dime you. They recognize the value that you provide. B clients are those clients that are right below those A clients. They could very easily like promote up there. They pay on time, maybe not early. They maybe don't give enough referrals or testimonials, but with prompting, they could do that. And so those might be your B clients. Then you kind of get into the C's and D's. The C's are, you can't deal with them, and D's are dead. So can't deal with is like, again, they might be a little cantankerous, but they still pay, and things like that. Whereas your dead clients, these are the ones that they're always the squeaky wheel. They are always giving you troubles. They're always making your team work extra hard, and they nickel and dime your bills. So they're not even valuing the service that you are providing. So when you take your customer list and you just put it down on a sheet of paper and you work with your sales team, your customer support team, your accounting teams, and you have them all do this individually, they will then come through and tell you which ones kind of come into which categories. And then your job is to essentially promote them all up. So the D clients you would get rid of, the C clients you would try to get them up to Bs. If you can't, you promote them to a competitor. And then Bs you're trying to promote to the As, and As you're trying to keep there. And as Mike said, imagine now if you had all the time that you're spending, and I'm going to use that word spending versus investing, that you're spending on the bad clients, that you're instead investing it on the good clients. What would that look like? What would your enjoyment level be? What would your productivity level be? And then ultimately, what would your revenue and profitability levels be? And that's where kind of this quote comes up of, when you're good to the bad, you're bad to the good. So you want to make sure that you're really focusing in on who are the good ones that we want to invest our time in. And believe me, I can appreciate that the emotional challenge of letting a client go, letting revenue go is heart-wrenching, but take a look at even just this exercise here, where you're looking at the bottom line between $19,000 and $3,000. I mean, again, if I just focus on the good ones, I exponentially dwarf the bad clients and what I'm getting there. So what we wanted to do now was kind of actually put you into a couple of breakout rooms and give you a chance to kind of think through some of this on your own. We're going to partner you up with somebody else. And what we want you to do is, like, what are the indicators in your business? What are the things that are driving cost from your perspective that you know about? What are some of the things that create scrap or that waste that we're talking about? And if you're in a professional services business, it's likely, are they having you print things? Are they having you redo things? Are they having you to meet several times to solve the same issue over and over again? So I want you to think about that, because that might be your waste or scrap in your business. And professional services, you've got write-offs, recaps, bakeries, it's an average dollar, sale sort of situation. CPAs, you might have a risk profile, or how you're pricing your services. And attorneys, you might have a realizable revenue per hour. So these are some of the examples that we want you to think about as you go into the breakout and start to work on some of these things for yourself. Are there any questions to the exercise? We're going to give you about 5 minutes to go in there and work with a partner on this. All right.
Is there a specific deliverable you want us to come back with?
You're just going to have your ideas on what are the variables that you're using to identify a good customer, and then what might be some of the variables that would identify if they're not a good customer. So what are some of the scrap and waste things? And we're going to do a bit of a debrief after that together as a group.
Yeah, and so the accountant in me says, go ahead and think about factual things, right? Try to find things that are measured, that can be measured, that can be proven, that can be quantified. For instance, number of credits, right? So we've seen where credit per invoice is a really interesting variable. But and the other things that are material. I mean, start with the big numbers first and see if you can find factors that take those big numbers and connect them directly to clients.
Awesome. All right, here comes your breakout room.
Services space. And so she has to deal with people like Stapleton Group and others who really want all of what's in their head to come out in the marketing material, but she's actually got to pull it out of us. We have to actually take the time to give it to her. So very interesting dynamics, and not traditional cost accounting questions to deal with, even though Eddie's heading that way, because he's going to have to figure out how to bid these jobs right and deal with losing to competitors that don't understand their cost structure.
To be competitive, yeah. And didn't you actually share a story with me the other day about how one company actually shared their cost structure with their competitors because of that very reason?
This is an old, don't quote me on this because it's been a long time since I've looked at it, but I believe it's an old Harvard Business School case study. And it was an oil drilling company, and they were continually getting beat out by competitors who were underpricing the work and then going out of business. And so they actually created a complicated costing model and provided it to all their competitors. And so it took some of the bad performers off the table, and they all found out that they were, at least putting fair bids on the table. But it was a pretty dramatic case.
I was going to say, otherwise known as price fixing.
Yeah. And then John got involved, and then
it went downhill from there. I've heard.
No, it was great. Yeah, it's very interesting. And Mary, I other than learning what that behavior looks like and asking questions in the interviewing process, you've got to be pretty disciplined at giving yourself a certain amount of time before you decide to pull the plug or start having the direct conversation earlier on to get the behavior to change so you can do a good job.
Yeah, and the right clients are willing to have the conversation. So, David Stapleton, who's been a client off and on for 6 years or so, when I say, hey, we're way over scope and this is why, he just like, okay, how much more money do you want? And that solves the problem. But I hate having to do that. I'd rather manage to scope because he's trying to run his business with a budget. And then alternatively, my clients, I have a client that has 4 or 5 different products. And so we're creating and implementing strategic marketing plans for each of these 4 or 5 different products. And some of them are a little bit compete with each other a little bit, but they're looking for a return on investment and how to price those and how much to invest in marketing and the strategies for that. So it is a very interesting, I don't get in the stuff that Mike does, the accounting, or what Stacy does the selling. They have other people who do that, but it is imperative. Like there's no return on investment for the work I do unless they do their part on the accounting and the sales side. And I can talk till I'm blue in the face about identifying the right clients. And if they don't take action, then I'm not going to be long for life as an advisor to them.
Right.
Aaron, what did you find? How was your conversation with Bartik? You got stuck with Mr. Bartik, right? Karen?
It was good. So I don't know, we talked about, we're a little bit of a different setup because we are contingency-based fees.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it a little bit different. The sales process becomes really important.
Just spitballing here, it seems like you would be very hard pressed to earn a contingency fee with a client that didn't have good books and records. And
yes.
So, a sophisticated HR department is kind of a double-edged sword, right? You need it so that you can get the information you need. But if they're too sophisticated, they're going to think they don't need you.
Yes. And we are doing tax credits. So we do rely on them to have good bookkeeping and accounting. Most of our clients aren't real big, so they don't have big HR departments, but definitely relying on good accounting records.
Yeah, what they said was interesting too, is that they can do all this work, create some tax credits, but if that year they don't need the tax credit, then they don't get paid. So, and then it rolls into the next year too. So it's interesting. They can do the work, find the tax credits for them, but then the business doesn't use them because they don't need it for that tax year.
How do you guys have a filter in place for, or a screen for potential clients?
Not as good as I would like it to be.
We discussed a little bit of that too, that everything, as Stacy mentioned, for some people, it looks like a nail.
Yeah,
We
good
need to be
answer.
a little clearer about what a nail actually is.
Yes, but they know they want to hit it.
Yeah, and
Whatever
I just in our organization too, because again, we are, you know, we've changed our business a ton from a billable day to a monthly retainer fee. And, you know, like in this meeting today, I've gotten 3 calls from clients because before we worked on a billable day, they knew Thursday they had Consilio and they would hold that stuff till Thursday. Now they feel that, hey, they're paying for us. They can call us day and night, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever they like, we're on call for them. So sometimes that's doesn't make for the best of ROI for us. But I do like when Eddie calls though.
Well, and again, this goes back to expectation setting. You know, how well and effectively do we set expectations with our clients on what they can expect from us and what that would look like and things like that. So again, back to that original conversation about how do we have these conversations with our customers to make sure that they still feel, you know, delighted, but don't, you know, take everything that we've got, sort of idea, right? Tim or John, anything else that you guys came up with during your breakout that you wanted to share?
Tim and I have no problems in our business, which is we're very fortunate in that regard.
Other than working with Mike?
Other than working with Mike. No. We have some similar problems, and that's sometimes we spend too much time hand-holding and
Yeah.
we need to get away from those people because we're hourly. We live by billable hours. And if somebody requires too much hand-holding, well, that's just not helpful because you can only build so much for that.
And they don't want to pay for that hand holding.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, John.
There's one of your
John's aware that,
variables. Mhm.
yeah, we work with a lot of distressed companies, and distressed companies sometimes make decisions that are not in their own best interest. And when we get involved in a company that's early distress, there's pressures to do things like maybe not pay your payroll withholding taxes, or decide that there's a certain vendor that is not that critical, or just there's any number of things. And what we find and have learned over the years is you watch a pattern and you make your recommendation, you tell them the reason why they shouldn't do it. If they do it anyway, and they do it a couple times, you got to part company, because otherwise it comes back on you as an advisor. When your client as an advisor is doing things that are known to be wrong, it reflects on us, and that's a tough one.
Exactly. Go ahead.
So in my world, it's very similar to what Mike just described, except that yes, I'm an advisor, yes, I'm a counselor, but I have to be in charge. And if I don't get to be in charge, and you're not going to do things the way I say they need to be done, or if we're not going to agree on how it's going to go forward, it's going to end badly for both. It's just not going to work. And I'll part ways very quickly with something like that, because I can only deliver what I deliver one way. And it has to be with me calling shots. I'll give options, but if I don't get to steer the ship, then forget it. So you have to go somewhere else. And too often I get in that isn't sorted out ahead of time, and that creates real issues.
So again, as you think about that, and you've got other people that are doing this, because you guys are the leaders, and you know, so you're making, you know, these things, and you're moving forward as you grow and you get more and more people in the organization. Those are going to be the philosophies that are critical to be passing down to make sure that more than just you can be making those decisions, or at very minimum spotting that, so that they can head those things off at the past. That's great.
And then Tim?
Yeah, so you know, it's the big things for us, again, it's the too much hand holding, the one-offs. So one of the big things for us is just staying focused and making sure that what we agree to is in our wheelhouse. Otherwise, we're spending too much time to build something that there's just not the profit there. And the other one is around the free consulting, where they'll just keep picking our brains to get what they need, and not signing up for more.
Yeah.
Or doing it on their own after that.
Right.
Exactly. That's all your after work. Don't give it away for free.
Yeah. So just wrapping up, let's flip over to the next slide. Everybody needs to be comfortable on the accounting and any other side that there's going to be unallocable expenses. You keep the number as low as you can, but at some point you just can't figure out which customer uses more electricity or not, and so you don't worry about it. Just focus on the things that matter. Really important to tie to the net income bottom line. Regardless of how you structure the income statement, the accountants are going to get really irritated if they don't come to the right net income number. Doesn't matter how it's broken up, got to be the right number.
Well, and this one, the thing that really popped off for me on this, and I'm not, a financial sheet sort of person, I'm the salesperson, right? But what I noticed right away is, first of all, you took my 19,000 down to 5,000 now. So I was at a 19,000 profitability. And now because of this, of course, the unallocable expenses, it drops. But look over at the direct customer expenses at 37K. If we just got rid of the bad, you could add those expenses back in to the good side of the profit formula. So again, when you start to see not only are you the headaches and the profit margin drain, but they're also taking your working cash, your working capital by servicing them. So it was just a really eye-opening way to look at it.
Yeah. And just a quick example, we had a large restaurant group that had large dinner houses and small restaurants, and they had 15 small restaurants and 4 big dinner houses, and were losing money, and the larger they grew, the more money they lost. We came in and did this analysis. We recommended that they shut the smaller restaurants completely and get rid of 70% of their corporate overhead staff. And they did. And they had 4 very profitable dinner house restaurants, and the executives had a very, very high quality of life. So this stuff can be very dramatic.
Yeah, when you implement it. And this is ultimately what we're driving at, is the Pareto principle, that 20% of your effort equals 80% of your results. The question is which 20%? And are you crystal clear on them? And can you communicate them effectively to the rest of the staff and team so that they can identify them and see them when you're not around? Like the hand-holding goes both ways. It goes for your clients and for the team. The more you have to handhold the team to service and to make sure that they are effective at doing what they need to do, the less profitable you are and the less time that you're investing in actually growing and facing forward on your business. So this principle gets applied over and over again when you think about it, and we can't drive it home for you enough.
And this is just a visual of what we've been talking about. And if you think about the approach as an iterative approach, most companies can do a fairly good job on the pointy ends. So the very profitable and referring and the very unprofitable, you can identify those fairly quickly, have a conversation with both ends of the pointy end of the bell curve, right? Make sure you understand why they're happy, why they're profitable, and there's things you're not going to understand that don't pop out of the numbers. Go over to the unprofitable side, that whole 20% on the left, have the same conversation. Tell them what behavior is driving costs on your end. And if they give you a blank stare and indicate that they don't care, it's time to raise the prices on them substantially. But the goal overall is to understand the pointy ends, get into that 60%, start having the conversations with the middle, and move as many of you as you can to the right, and identify those that aren't going to move to the right, and make a determination about how long you need them in the organization.
Release the doves.
The doves, yeah, for sure.
Promote them to your competitors. Let them be their profit margin drain.
Yeah.
It's another good market strategy.
For sure.
So why does it matter? So a couple of things you guys might know, but if not, bear repeating, or if you do, bear repeating. Leads are 6 times more expensive. So when you're thinking about growing your business and from the sales side of the house, it's 6 times more expensive to go get a new lead than it is to convert the ones that you already have in the pipeline or to sell to your existing customers. So when you're thinking about profitability and how to drop things to the lowest end, the last place you want to go is lead gen. That's, on my profit formula scale, that's the last place I go. Leads, conversion rate, average dollar sale, number of transactions, and margin. I usually start with margin, then I move into conversion rate, then average dollar sale and number of transactions. And the last thing I go to is leads, just because they're so expensive. And oftentimes we don't know exactly which ones we're targeting, because it's just kind of like you throw out your net and you catch some. You want to make sure that you're selling to the more profitable clients, obviously, and then looking at your existing client base and looking at how do you expand that. So you, rather than going market share, you want to go wallet share. You're trying to go deeper with these same clients, which might require that you create some additional services or things that allow you to be able to sell to your good, profitable clients more and more and over again. Goes without saying, we want you to sell to the ones you love. I mean, besides the fact that it just makes you feel good that you're actually working with the people that you enjoy, it's also the most profitable for you. The other thing is it also shows your team that how people treat you and how your customers treat you matters. They're just sitting around waiting for you to make this decision. So the more you zero them in and focus on that, the happier, and as Mike said, the emotional well-being is going to tick up. And when people are emotionally stable and psychologically safe, productivity goes through the roof. And then lastly, we'll repeat that client type doesn't matter. It's not about, oh, I can't work with restaurants or I can't work with professional services. It's more about the behavior. As we said, it's more about the people that, as Mary said, it's finding the other Stapletons that they care when she comes to them and says, hey, we're outside of scope. This isn't what's, what we agreed to and what's not working. And they come to the table and say, oh, well, let's understand that. How do we fix that? Do we need to raise prices? Do we need to change, our scope and how we're doing things? And really being in this together. Guys, relationships are not 50-50. They are 100-100. You need both parties to come all the way to the table and do their part. And that includes customers. So you want to make sure that you're really looking at that.
Yeah, we don't have time today, but if anybody wants to buy me a drink, I'll tell them about the difference between Walmart and Costco.
Great story. Yes, you should. And so some of the things that you can do after this is start to look at that ABCD list, take that worksheet that we provided you, go through that exercise, do that with your team, do it yourself, have your accounting team do it, and have your sales team do it. Have them all do it independently and then come back together. Don't let them influence each other. And then start to zero in on what are those elements that really do make a great customer and what are the cost drivers in your business so that you can be really clear on it. And so we're at the end of our time. I want to honor that. We do have some time left. Mike and I are going to stay here if you have any Q&A. Otherwise, as I said, we are offering a complimentary 30-minute session with the two of us together. We're happy to review any of these things with you. And if you want to share some of the things specific to your business, we'd be happy to troubleshoot or provide some consulting or insights based on what we know to be true. Questions, comments, thoughts, compliments?
Good stuff.
Yeah, great session. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Welcome.
Very thought-provoking.
Appreciate your time.
Yep. One strategy, one of these things can dramatically change your business. It's not sweeping reform here that we're going for. It's you're now into the subtleties of it. Very cool. All right, good. Well, I will definitely, and I'll definitely send out the recording.
It's actually really good. It's easy to pass on. So you're talking to any business owner, it's easy to pass on the way that you simplified the message to hopefully to get people's alerts to go up.
Yes, exactly. And again, I think, what we've found historically to be true, and Mike and I were talking about this, is we both found you can fire close to 30% of your clients and have higher profitability than you did before you started.
Yeah, you may not even drop revenue when you do that.
Exactly. But you'll likely raise profits.
For sure. Yeah.
So, which is just a crazy thought to me because we all chase revenue, or at least the salespeople do. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your day. And
Thanks,
like I said,
everybody.
we're here if you have any questions. And feel free to stick around and ask any questions you have.
Good to meet or see you.
Thanks. Take care. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Tim.